Hello there, everybody. How's it going? I'm the Meister, and welcome back to the wonderful city of Timbukton. In today's episode 48, we will be continuing the airport build. More specifically, we're going to get into the international terminal of the airport. So it's going to be a much bigger terminal, much bigger planes will be stationed there. So it'll be pretty interesting. So the layout of this episode is going to be quite similar to the last episode, in the sense that, we're just going to be plopping down a whole bunch of props and a few planes and stuff. So it'll be pretty interesting. It'll just be to a lot bigger scale than the last episode. But yeah, it should be pretty fun. Now, what I've just done there, you guys might be a little confused, or you might get the gist of it. I plopped down a whole bunch of useful props that I'm going to use repeatedly over this episode. So instead of browsing through menus again and again and again, it's much easier just to lay everything out in plain sight. It's super easy to browse for what you're looking for, and I can just use the Move It tool to copy and paste all those props that I laid down on the taxiway there. So it just makes for a much easier process, especially when dealing with, potentially hundreds of different props and stuff for a particular build. And plus, we're doing some pretty complex and intricate stuff here with all the gates and walkways and jetways, whatever you want to call them. So, it just makes it much easier. But yeah, if I come to think of it, I'm not sure if this would be solely a domestic, or an international terminal, because Timbukton Airport isn't huge or anything to the extent where, you would have a dedicated international terminal. So I guess we could say that this is like an international / domestic terminal, but with bigger gates that can service bigger planes. Maybe that would be a more realistic alternative. I'm not really sure, but regardless, it's Terminal 2, and it's a lot larger than Terminal 1, which is the regional terminal we worked on last episode. This airport pack from Vazimir, I talked about it last episode, but in this episode you'll really be able to see the extent and I guess the down to the finest details you can go with this pack here. Like, just plopping down a simple gate takes many pieces, and you need to work everything out so it fits perfectly with your airplanes. Different planes have like different heights for their doors and stuff, so you gotta watch out with what sort of props you're going for here. But it makes for a pretty interesting build. It's a little challenging, but it's a ton of fun. So right now, guys, I'm building the two largest gates of the airport that is part of Terminal 2. And this is where like the large international flights from Europe and all over the place. And here you'll typically find some bigger planes. So in a second here, I'm gonna place a nice A330 from KLM Airlines. We'll say that there's a weekly flight from Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam directly to Timbukton. But anyhow, guys, I'm just gonna let you watch me plop away for a few minutes here, and I'll check back on you in a little while. So this gate configuration that I'm plopping down right now, it's a copy of the one I was setting up for the Caribbean Airlines airplane there just a second ago. But this gate setup will be copied throughout the rest of this terminal, so it'll be the same size gate. I will, however, go back over it and readjust it a little bit, as you know, gates are typically not parked exactly the same for each gate, depending on like what plane was there before, or you know, whatever the case may be. Gates are not exactly identical throughout a whole terminal. In just a second here, I'm going to plop down a whole bunch more gates along this terminal. I was building up the airport, and I noticed, after looking at some images of various airports around North America, I noticed that gates are typically a lot closer together than what I had them here. So I'm just going to plop a whole bunch of smaller gates, and you know, it'll make for a lot more flights that can come in and out of the airport. But what's kind of interesting is I'm sort of making them on this nice curve here, so they go nicely with the terminal. So unfortunately at the end I end up doing a little bit of work twice, but you know, it's no big deal. So for this terminal 2, most of what you're going to see is like 737s, A321s, A320s, those types of airplanes, as you know, they're super common for both international and regional jets. But I will plop down a few, well, like you've seen, that KLM flight. That is one of a few larger aircraft gates. I don't think we'll ever see any like 747s in Timbukton, or any like A380s for that matter. But I assume like an A340, maybe like a Boeing 777 is like the bigger airplanes, the biggest airplanes that you would see in Timbukton ever. So I did plop down 2 larger gates. I think I end up plopping one more in a couple of minutes here. But most of what you're going to see, just like any medium-sized airport anywhere in the world nowadays, you'll pretty much just find a huge number of 737s and smaller Airbus planes. And of course, Timbukton is no exception to that. But anyways, guys, we're nearing the end of this episode already. It was a ton of fun, and we've covered a fair bit of content. Next episode, I'm not really sure what we'll get into. I might start the parking area just to spice things up a little bit, just to change it up. And yeah, that's probably what I'll get into. But nonetheless, I mean, this has been a super fun project so far, and I can't wait to get into like the runway markings and the taxiway markings and all that kind of stuff. That'll be super fun, and it'll be a pretty challenging thing to do as well, especially when it comes to the taxiway signs. It's not challenging in the sense that they're hard to understand. Like, once you get the gist of it, the concept is fairly simple. It's just to make your own custom taxiway signs in City Skylines is pretty challenging in itself, because each sign has like various letters and numbers that you need to plop down meticulously one beside the other. But we'll get into that in a few episodes. And of course, we'll have to devise a plan as well on what the taxiway layout will be. So that will probably be the next episode after the parking or the terminal episode, whatever you want to call it. So for this episode, guys, I won't be featuring the entire detailing of every single gate all the way through this terminal. It would get pretty redundant. So I am going to showcase detailing this A330 right here, as it's kind of like the staple of this airport. It's the biggest plane. So I will be taking a lot of time to detail it properly, and you'll see that I'm going to do some pretty neat stuff here in just a minute. But at the end of this episode, guys, as I usually do, there will be some pretty cool cinematics of this entire terminal, and I will have detailed every gate off camera. You'll get to see what the whole thing looks like at the end of this episode, so stay tuned for that, guys. I think you won't be disappointed. And this is really cool here, what I'm about to do. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm bragging or whatever, but sometimes I just get these crazy ideas and stuff, and I'm like, oh, wouldn't that be cool to show off? But yeah, I'm gonna place this little cargo port on this A330 here, and make a nice baggage handling situation going on here. But anyways, guys, that is it for this episode. I really appreciate you watching. Go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel for much more videos just like this one. And yeah, that is it. Until the next episode, guys, please take care.